We are here for you on radio, television and online. Across England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Friday and Sunday night from 9, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
We're on the same page again. There's something good happening.
Let Ian finish. Don't be such a cranky. That mini budget was the tip of the iceberg.
And on Saturday, my show just got bigger. From 8, it's Mark Dolan's Saturday Night In.
You can't govern a country if you can't speak.
Stop talking.
My God, we reached the end. I've never been early in my life. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
And it's about standards and public life. No, I'll tell you what's hypocrisy, Narendra.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin.
We believe in the UK.
No bias, no censorship.
It just doesn't make sense to me. He wasn't doing his job as Chancellor.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton Tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News.
Hello and welcome. I'm Alastair Stewart, and for the next 2 hours I'll be keeping you company here on TV and radio with the stories that really matter across the country. We've plenty coming up today, including, have you got ideas that you're already putting into place to stretch those shopping pounds and those gallons of fuel? As the cost of living crisis grips us in the run-up to Christmas, we'll be chatting to a range of guests on how Britons will be adapting to survive this winter and building the businesses also that promise a better tomorrow. So all of that to come, and we really want to hear from you. But first, let's bring you right up to date with all of the day's news. Here's Tatiana Sanchez.
Thank you, Alastair. Good afternoon. 1 minute past 12. This is the latest from the GB newsroom. Some breaking news to bring you. At least 8 people have died and 13 are missing after a landslide in Italy. The incident happened on the holiday island of Ischia, which has been hit by heavy rain in recent days. Emergency services say they're continuing the search and rescue operation as buildings have been engulfed by the landslide. We'll bring you more on this as we get it. An independent review into the London Fire Brigade has found the service to be institutionally misogynist and racist. Well, our national reporter, Theo Chikomba, is outside the LFB's headquarters for us. Theo, what can you tell us about this new report?
Yes, that's right. It's a damning report looking into the culture here at the London Fire Brigade. Now, this report was commissioned back in 2020 when a trainee took his life. He had asked for support and asked to be moved a number of times, but that didn't happen. Now, Nazir Afzal, a former chief crown prosecutor in the Northwest, says the London Fire Brigade is institutionally misogynistic and racist. Just an example in this report, a black firefighter had a noose put by his locker, and a female firefighter had a video, inappropriate video of a colleague exposing himself sent to her. Now, the Commissioner, Andy Rowe, has said that there's no place for discrimination and harassment, bullying in the brigade, and around 2,000 staff who are still working in the force and those who have left gave their testimonies in this independent report.
Thank you very much, Theo, for that. We'll bring you more on that story as we get it. Train cleaners have voted to strike over pay in what would be the biggest strike ever in the industry. The Rail, Maritime and Transport unions say more than 1,000 of its members working for several private contractors backed the industrial action. It says rail strikes by train drivers continue today with more travel disruption expected. Members of ASLEF across 11 train operators will walk out in a dispute over pay, meaning a significantly reduced service. The death of a man at the Manston Migrant Processing Centre may have been caused by a bacterial infection. That's according to the Home Office. An investigation is currently ongoing and the coroner hasn't made a final conclusion on the cause of his death. It's believed the man arrived in the UK on a small boat just a week before he died. The government say they're offering vaccinations for the infection at the Manston Centre. The United Nations is calling for humanitarian aid for people in Ukraine who have been left without power following Russian attacks. It's after Ukraine's President Zelensky says 6 million people are without electricity after the series of rocket attacks earlier on this week. The mayor of Ukraine, Vitaly Klitschko, says about 70% of households in Kyiv still have no power. Meanwhile, British military intelligence says Russia is removing nuclear warheads from old cruise missiles before using them for attacks in Ukraine. The MOD says the move highlights Moscow's low stock of long-range missiles. England manager Gareth Southgate played down boos by disappointed fans following the Lions' draw with the USA in the World Cup last night. It means the team missed out on a chance to guarantee a place in the last 16. Supporters at a fan zone in South London were furious by the result, throwing cups and spraying drinks. England will face Wales next, with the latter needing that victory to keep up their chances of making the knockout stages. Former England manager Sam Allardyce says he's still hopeful England can win the tournament.
There's enough experience in the backroom staff, the manager, there's enough experience in the squad now, having gone through 2 tournaments, that they've got the tools to win this competition. But Gareth needs to use the squad to its full potential, and that means, for me, quite a few changes for the next game.
Well, disappointed England and Wales fans in Qatar still believe they have a chance at moving on in the tournament.
You're always hopeful as an England fan that we'll progress in the tournament. They're a good football team. They've got some of the world's best players. Yes, they didn't perform last night, but you're always hopeful. You always live for that dream.
I mean, we are disappointed with the results, certainly in the Iran game. We were hoping to get a point out of that, at least, to put us in a big position and keep destiny in our own hands for the next round of games. But we are still in the tournament going into the final round of games. We can still qualify, OK? We're delighted to still be in that conversation.
And the Met Office has issued yellow weather warnings for rain and strong winds for large parts of the UK this weekend. Conditions will affect southern England, Wales and Scotland. The warnings in Wales and England come into force at 2 p.m. today and they stay in place until 3 a.m. tomorrow morning. Forecasters say there's going to be travel disruption as well as a result. This is GB News. We'll bring you more news as it happens. Now it's back to Alastair Stewart and friends.
Tatiana, thank you very much indeed. So, with no sign of inflation falling or the general cost of living crisis easing, and as current strikes continue and others are poised to unfold, we're committing today's programme to try and help you, as the government is about to spend £25 million on an advertising campaign sharing their best tips on how to cut back on energy, reduce your bills and reduce national demand. We just wondered if you out there might have even better ideas or clever ploys that you've already put in place to make those few pounds go a little bit further. So do please send them in and we will share the best. The address, as always, is GBViews at GBNews, or you can tweet at GBNews, or you can tweet me directly or go on Facebook, and we will share the best with everybody watching and listening as we proceed through the next couple of hours. Now, good news for some. The next tranche of bailout money is about to wing its way to the poorest, including pensioners. We at GB News have no money to give you, but we have great guests who might just be able to help you save real cash and get through it all. But also, as more rail strikes are confirmed, how are you getting from A to B? How are you communicating with people in the face of the postal strike and, indeed, in the run-up to Christmas, getting stuff to people? With nurses poised to down tools except in emergencies, maybe there aren't any fallback positions, but have you had thoughts about that as well? Does a fallback position exist? I've got a nurse coming on the programme a bit later on to talk about the strike and what we should do. As a nation, let's be blunt, we don't like to curl up in defeat, so let's see if we can help each other pull through. We've also got some really important thoughts about how to avoid the scammers and the fraud merchants for whom these hard times are a perfect breeding ground for their nastiness. Even so-called Black Friday deals and offers need a health warning, and we have that for you as well. Let me repeat it once more. I'd love to hear from you, so please do send in your thoughts on all of that and anything else that's troubling you, and I will share the best as we move towards 2 o'clock here on GB News TV and radio. The address again, at GBViews. Start that again. GBViews at gbnews.uk. Tweet at GBNews or tweet me direct or go on to Facebook. And let's start with one of the best young political commentators around, Lettice Bromovsky, who I always like to talk about these things, and she is here live in the studio with me. The government is spending a fortune on the energy price protection scheme and is about to spend another £25 million on an advertising campaign. Do you think they've got a grip on this?
No, I don't think they have a grip on this at all, to be quite honest with you. And I think one of the main reasons that they don't have a grip is this crisis is not just affecting the most vulnerable or the poorest in society, as in previous, crises we've potentially seen this, but this is affecting every single person in society. Everyone is struggling with their energy bills right now, and no one can quite comprehend it. On the front page of The Independent today, they ran with the story about how by next April, 1 million people are going to be in fuel poverty. And this is all also because of the government plans and them backtracking again and governments changing over again and again. So in the budget just a few weeks ago, Jeremy Hunt said that they would be dropping that energy price guarantee from what it is right now, £2,100 per household, and it will be going up to £3,000 per household. This is a huge increase for a lot of people who are already struggling with these prices.
Sure.
Yes.
And for some, the struggle becomes unbearable, which is why the gentleman sitting next to you is now going to join our conversation. It's Matt Drumfield, who is the CEO of the London Debt-Free Advice Service, set up by the Mayor. I mean, the fact of the matter is she's absolutely spot on. It's been bad. It is likely to get worse. We heard that from Ofgem just the other day. And you are there, set up by the Mayor, not to try and help people save money, but to try and help people just keep going. What a state of affairs.
It's a mess, Alastair, absolutely. Our charity's been running for the last 16 years, and this is as bad as we've ever seen it. Inquiries into our service up 300% compared to this time last year, and we're speaking about energy right now. For many of our customers, they're in local authority housing or housing associations, which means they're on prepayment meters. So people are already choosing to self-disconnect from their electric and gas. They cannot keep their families warm this Christmas. And we speak about, we've heard around the vouchers that people are getting. Many of our customers are not receiving those vouchers yet, and they're having to constantly chase to get them. So we're really, really concerned about what this winter looks like for so many people.
Sure. But whichever side of the political spectrum you come from, and I'm guessing you might be slightly different on that spectrum, the fact of the matter is, as a country, we cannot afford, as taxpayers, to sort it all out. As everybody who's got an ounce of intelligence has said, this is essentially about Ukraine, it's about global gas, energy and oil prices and what have you, short of completely changing the political system, which some people have been saying, we are stuck in that corner. And when we were preparing this programme, one thing struck me, and this is to both of you, that there are an awful lot of folk, good folk like you out there and a couple of other guests who are coming along in just a moment, full of great ideas, how to save a bob or two here, how to get through it. There's virtually no real advice out there about how to build growth in the economy, how to support people creating new businesses who generate new wealth and from that new taxes and what have you. I mean, my nightmare is dependency culture and slump. Do you sense that?
Well, you make a good point, but the question is, if the government can't afford to keep people warm this winter, where they're going to end up, where families are going to end up in this hospital with pneumonia, and then the bill for the NHS will go through the roof, and the NHS is already on its knees, right? We need to keep families warm. We need to put the support in place. And yes, there are global events affecting people's energy prices, but we can't let people die this winter because they can't turn their bills on, right?
Nobody here is saying that for a moment, but I noticed when I mentioned a bit about growth, job creation, wealth creation, your head was nodding in agreement. I mean, there literally, post the budget, is a zero agenda on that front.
I agree with that. I think the budget that Jeremy Hunt brought out was dramatically disappointing in generating growth. We seem to be stuck, as Rachel Reeves said just the other day, in this doom loop. Like, we are getting borrowing, taxing, spending again and again and again on top of each other. From the budget, one thing which I thought was so disappointing, as you were saying earlier, we've got nurses on strike at the moment. They're asking for a 19% pay rise. That's a lot. In total, it would cost the government about 10 billion. The government put forward to increase benefits in line with inflation. That's costing them £11 billion. That's basically a dead-end road. Those benefits are going nowhere. There is no growth generated from giving people those increase in benefits.
Yeah, I mean, one of the extraordinary things, and we've heard it time and time again on GB News, TV and radio, is the number of nurses that are voting with their wallets and their feet. They're going to work in Tesco or in some other supermarket. Before you got into debt advisory work, you used to work with young people on building up their skill set, getting out there, finding a job, earning money, and at the end of the day, paying tax. Don't we need 100 times more of that right now?
We do. We need to support people into high-paid jobs. It's a very good question, and one that we'd love to have a government minister on the sofa with us to discuss properly. I spoke about the 300% increase we're seeing coming through to our service. Traditionally, over the last 16 years, it's lots of people that were looking for work, people that I helped when I was working for the youth charity. Yes. It's not anymore. It's nurses, it's teachers, it's doctors. It's the people we clapped during the COVID pandemic. And they're now struggling. They're working endless hours to support us and our families when we're sick, and yet we, as a society, are not supporting them in return.
One thing that I will say, which is brutal, and obviously I wasn't going to agree with you, and nobody is suggesting that folk are going to die and we should do nothing about it. I'd be the last person to say that. But one thing that I will say, which is quite brutal, is that there is much more energy in building up a dependency culture than there is in a stand on your own 2 feet and pay your way. When you talked about folk who cannot pay their bills and end up in your office talking to your brilliant team, and they are a brilliant team, and they are great, great people, it's because they don't earn enough, they don't have the right job, or they haven't been able to set up a business that generates even more money. If you stick all of that together and those extra payments winging their way, universal credit top-ups, pensioners and the rest of it, it is fanning the flames of a dependency culture rather than a stand-on-your-own-2 feet culture. I know that's harsh, but I wanted to say it. Your view?
And I think many people would agree with you watching at home. I think if you come into our advice centres and shadow some of our advisors, you'll see so many people working 2, 3 jobs whilst having childcare responsibilities, whilst looking after a member of their family. They're doing everything they can to pay their bills, to put food on the table. But with the rate of inflation at the moment, with everything else going on, that just isn't enough, right? There's only so many hours in the day. If you're doing 3 jobs, what else can you do? And yes, when I was working in the youth employment charity for people starting their career, that was great to get them a foot up. But when people are already doing 3 jobs, they haven't got time to start their own business. Not everyone can run their own business. We need nurses, we need teachers, we need people in our supermarkets. They're good jobs, as I said. We clapped them during the COVID pandemic. We can't have a society without them. They're vital.
Lettuce.
Yeah, definitely on the nurses front, I completely agree, and I do think the nurses should get a pay rise. What they're asking for now, and even Rishi Sunak came out yesterday saying, you know, at this time, that is a rather impossible ask to give you 19% of a pay rise. But they're vital. They're saving lives. And just the 2 days of strikes that they'll be going on in December, and now we're going to have about 30,000 operations postponed because of this. We've got waiting times of 1.7 million. And I think a lot of the pay increase that is there is within NHS funding on the whole. Just before Tony Blair came in, the funding for the NHS was about £33 billion. It's now at 180 around about billion pounds. That is an almost six-fold increase in funding for the NHS. The money for the pay rises must be found in there. There needs to be reform. Things need to be moved around. Where is all of this money going otherwise? We've got longest wait times, no ambulances, you can't get anyone on the phone, weeks to see a doctor for, the smallest ailments. There must be reform there.
Have you both trimmed your sails personally? I don't know what you earn, and it's none of my business, but to live within that. But we have, and I'm lucky. I've been gainfully employed all my life, and quite often in jobs that pay quite well. I'm the first to admit that quite publicly. But even now, we are trimming our sails here and there. Have you had to do that personally?
The same, yes. I mean, I have a good job. I'm paid well for that job that I do. My service charge for the apartment I live in London has gone up by 33% this month. That's about £190 I've been asked for more. So my gym membership.
What's been the most efficient and effective thing that you've done in terms of your personal budget?
So I've cancelled my gym membership. I can't afford to do that and that increase, right? I'm going to have to go, not going to have to. I'm going to go for runs on the street. I can't go to gym classes anymore. I've got to make cutbacks. Lots of people have got to do that. Unfortunately, for many of our customers, they've already cut back on everything they possibly can.
Because that would be top of the list when they sat down opposite you and said, I'm in debt. So, OK, tell me your standing orders, tell me your subscriptions. What have you done that's been the most radical thing?
I haven't turned my heating on yet. So our house has agreed that it's just not cost-effective, and I'd rather sit there at my desk, go into the office, or sit there at my desk with two jumpers, a dressing gown and a hat on, rather than turn it on. But not just for me. I've had some of my friends, they're leaving their homes to go back home to live with their parents because it is just not sustainable, the amount of money they spend on the rent, the amount of money they spend on their bills. We're not saving anything as a younger generation, so it's easier to live at home than it is to rent somewhere.
Tell me about it.
Yeah.
The final point, and it segues nicely from that, actually, and you were both very candid about the dangers of a dependency culture, and thank you particularly for being as frank as you were. The other thing I sense, partly as an observer, but also partly as a dad, is a generational divide. I said, top-up payments winging their way, whether it's the winter fuel allowance for pensioners or the pension being index-linked as per the triple lock agreement that was in the Conservative Party's manifesto, etc., etc., etc. But people of her age and my children's age feel people of my age are getting it all, and there's zilch for them. So a dependency culture and an anger from younger folk towards older people. Do you sense that when you talk to people?
I'll give you an example of a customer that came in just this week, right? A young working family. One is a teacher, one is a nurse in the NHS. They had £11,000 worth of debt to their local authority in council tax arrears because they're prioritising feeding their family and everything else first. The council was demanding £3,500 a month in their payments to repay that. That's 3 times their monthly income between them, right? And they're doing really valuable jobs. But there is hope, because I don't want to put us out there, right? Our advisors were there, they stepped in, they managed to write off £1,500 of that debt, and rather than the extortionate £3,500 monthly payments, they negotiated, and with our advisors' support, they brought that down to £458. So then that customer now has in their family £300 a month more. And just want to get in there quick, our advisors work 7 days a week. Yeah. Yes, we've got advisors in London, but we're open nationally. If there's people watching at home and they're worried about it, they should call us now on 0800 808 5700. We're 7 days a week, and we're open 8 a.m. till 8 p.m.
Good man. We'll put that up on the website as well. Matt Drumfield, always... no, it's a pleasure to meet you. We haven't spoken before. No. Letty Brunski, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. Really honest conversation, and thank you for that. And one thing that one of our viewers has already tweeted in, I now share with you, is when you do turn on the central heating, make sure that the radiators in rooms that you don't use or don't use quite so much are turned down. And if you don't use the word room at all, turn it right off.
Yeah, good advice.
Good to see both of you. Thank you very, very much indeed. Continuing this conversation, someone who's been on the programme before, and I'm delighted to say has agreed to come back, Fem Moore, also known on social media as She's on a Budget, and there she is. She's a one-woman band, in a way, in a mission to share the tools of financial independence with her followers. Followers, I say lightly, 6.7 thousand subscribers on YouTube, 7.1 thousand 100,000 on TikTok. She must be doing something right, and what was an advice service has now, in effect, pretty well become a business. So we're talking here about checking out on subscriptions if you don't really need them. Get rid of them. Don't use the central heating if you've got a cardigan available. And when you do turn the central heating on, check that you're not heating rooms that you don't use. What are your top tips just to help folk get through it all?
To be honest, I feel like now more than ever, Alastair, we need to really make sure that we're managing the money, the little money that we have. And my advice has been to my followers, as always, to make sure your budget is realistic and it is paving forward towards your goal. So my goal at the moment is obviously keeping an eye on my electricity, my gas, making sure that, you know, my money's going there first, above everything else, because that's the one expense that I'd say is increased the most out of everything else. I just feel like I was listening to one of your colleagues, and I feel like, you know, yes, it may seem like, you know, people on low incomes having that increase next year may seem like going into a bit of a money pit, but at the same time, I feel there is a lack of education. I agree with you. There is a dependency out there mindset because people haven't been given the skills or know how to manage their money. They don't know how to write a budget. And I think that is where it's unfortunate, you know?
Well, the timing is brilliant because we were talking about the need to give advice and guidance, and Matt was that's what he used to do. He used to work with young people, trying to skill them up, find them work, and so on. And you are an outstanding example of that yourself, because you had difficulties in your private life, none of our business, but we have talked about it before. But you also had massive debt. So you were giving advice to people, you came up with great answers, and it's now a business. You're now monetizing those volumes of followers, so it can be done.
I hear you, but not everybody is like me, and not everybody has the, you know, the mindset to, you know, go out and research and look into these things. For me, there wasn't anyone like me at the time. I've recently started doing TikTok lives where we do like mock budget Wednesdays, and people send me in their budgets, and we try to like construct a realistic budget for them. You'd be surprised how many people don't know the basics in terms of ins and outs and how to balance what's remaining over. And it is worrying because not everybody wants to go to like a debt agency or something like that. They feel embarrassed, they feel shy. When they see someone who's a bit more relatable, I suppose, like myself, and they've heard my story, it's easier to kind of like offload. But there needs to be more help out there, Alastair. I really do believe that, like, you know, the dependency mindset is built because we haven't been given the skills and we haven't been given the education on what basic bookkeeping and financial management is all about.
Sure. No, I agree with that. Absolutely. You've got to put your hand up, and you've got to read the stuff and inform yourself as well as skill yourself.
Yeah.
But Fem, are you worried, and I put this to Lettice and I put it to Matt as well, are you worried that on the other side of this, which we will get through, no doubt we will get through it, but on the other side of this there is a dependency culture and a flat, low-growth economy, which does none of us any good?
Yeah, I am worried about that. As I said, the dependency mindset has definitely been built on because of lack of education. And I like literally, I can't emphasize that enough. It is a lack of education. If you keep giving people handouts and telling them this, but not constructing a way or educating them with a way to set up that money or to invest that money or to put that money to good use, what do you expect to happen? What do you expect to happen? They're going to just become dependent on you giving them handouts. We need to help them by actually instilling them with those skills to get them further on, you know, to get them ahead.
Sure. Well, that's Fem, always a pleasure to talk to you. Pimp my budget. We saw the poster up there behind you, quite right too, and put little labels on jam jars and make sure you've got a bit enough money to pay for whatever you have to. Fem, thank you very much indeed. Keep in touch. You're always welcome. Back on the programme. So there we are, repeating one thing that both Lettice and Matt also said is just inform yourself so that you don't get debt and financial crises creeping up on you and go, oh, what was that all about? And follow people like Fem on social media. That's cheap. It's free. You can get really good advice and very good guidance. And that applies also to Matt Drumfield's London debt-free advice service. It's debt-free is the ambition, and it is free, so do get in touch. Joining us now is Jeff Moody, who is the GB News South West of England reporter, who's in Affinity Devon outlet in Bideford for us to see what they're making of it on the streets of Bideford. Jeff, always good to see you. Over to you, my friend.
Well, retailers have been a bit worried about this Black Friday, haven't they, Alastair? They were worried that it was going to be a bit like today's weather, a damp squib. But it hasn't been. It's defied all expectations. Sales this Black Friday and this weekend have been as good as last year, if not better. To give you an example of that, Barclaycard are saying that they've had a 3.2% rise in sales, in credit card transactions, and footfall has been up as well on 2021. Still not back to pre-pandemic levels though, but still pretty healthy. Now, we both know, don't we, Alastair, that statistics sometimes lie. They can be a false friend, and normally Black Friday is a real indicator. If you get a bumper Black Friday, that means that you're going to have a bumper December, a great Christmas for everybody. But talking to people here at this shopping centre, this retail outlet in Bideford this morning, people are telling me, yes, they have come out for to get as many bargains as they can, but what they're trying to do this year is buy everything in one fell swoop, to go in on Black Friday, throughout this weekend, Cyber Monday, buy all of their Christmas shopping in one go. So we could well see that this is a bit of a false start, really. Let's see what they had to say.
I'm going to go to my daughter's. All the family are going to go there, and instead of buying presents, we've all kind of put money in each for the Christmas day, so we can have nice food and things. Otherwise, it's a bit tight for everyone, really.
Cutting back a lot. We just use a lot of selling sites, shopping in charity shops, locally as well, so supporting local businesses. But yeah, cutting back a hell of a lot.
So Santa will be coming, but maybe the list is a little bit shorter, a little bit more limited than last year.
Yes, my sources at the North Pole tell me that Santa Claus will be coming this year, but with a slightly smaller sack.
There we are, Jeff, to you and to your guests there. Thank you very much indeed. And just to underline that very first point that you made, because it is actually a very realistic saving tip as well. If you know that you've got to go and do various things around the town or wherever it may be, try and group them together, because that motor car behind you will be guzzling up the petrol as it goes. So if you can make just one journey and tick all of those boxes, it actually makes economic sense as well. Jeff Moody, thank you very much indeed. As I said, always good to see you. Jeff Moody, West of England correspondent. And you're watching and listening to Alastair Stewart and Friends, with lots more coming up on today's programme. The number of young people experiencing homelessness reaches 86,000. Our GB News Midlands reporter joined fundraisers sleeping out overnight to raise money in support of them. We'll find out how that went next.
Looking ahead to this afternoon, and the UK is looking to be rather mild thanks to the winds upcoming from the south. Let's take a look at the details. These southerly winds will be brisk, with strong gusts developing across north-east Scotland as outbreaks of rain arrive during the afternoon, though Shetland will stay drier until the evening. Winds will be particularly strong in the west, with the risk of coastal gales. However, it will turn drier for Northern Ireland as the rain clears. Areas of northern England will see some heavier bursts of rain develop into the afternoon, turning it into a wet and soggy Saturday. Despite the mild conditions for late November, the feel of things will be tempered by all the rain and wind, and northwestern Wales will be exposed to some of the strongest gales. Inland areas of England will be slightly more sheltered during the day, but the breeze will begin to pick up as the cloud thickens and the outbreaks of rain gradually progress eastwards. It's southeast England that will remain driest for the longest, and there'll be some hazy sunshine during the afternoon, but temperatures may be a touch lower than those in the west. And due to the wet week many western areas have had, the additional rainfall this afternoon could lead to some disruption and surface flooding, so care should be taken when travelling. Following highs of 14 Celsius, temperatures won't drop too much this evening, and that's your weather.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Friday and Sunday night from 9, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
We're on the same page again. There's something good happening.
Let Ian finish. Don't be such a cranky.
That mini budget was the tip of the iceberg.
And on Saturday, my show just got bigger. From 8, it's Mark Dolan's Saturday Night In.
You can't govern a country if you can't speak. Stop talking.
My God, we reached the end. I've never been early in my life. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
And it's about standards and public life. No, I'll tell you what's hypocrisy, Narinda.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin.
We believe in the UK.
No bias, no censorship.
It just doesn't make sense to me. He wasn't doing his job as Chancellor.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton Tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News.
Good afternoon, it's 12:34. I'm Tatiana Sanchez in the GB newsroom. At least 13 people are missing after a landslide in Italy. 8 people were believed to have died, according to one Italian government official, but the Interior Minister says the deaths haven't been confirmed. The incident happened on the holiday island of Ischia, which has been hit by heavy rain in recent days. Emergency services say they're continuing the search and rescue operation as buildings have been engulfed by the landslide. We'll bring you more on this as we get it. And the London Fire Brigade's commissioner has accepted the organisation is institutionally racist and misogynistic. Andy Rowe told the BBC he was heartbroken and has vowed change following an independent review into the company's culture. The report revealed accounts from a black firefighter who had a noose placed by his locker, women being groped and people having their helmets filled with urine. The review was commissioned after a trainee firefighter took his own life in 2020. Rail strikes by train drivers continue today, with more travel disruption expected for passengers. Members of ASLEF across 11 train operators will walk out in a dispute over pay, meaning a significantly reduced service. The General Secretary of ASLEF is due to meet the Transport Secretary Mark Harper next week to discuss the dispute. England manager Gareth Southgate played down boos by disappointed fans following the Lions' draw with the USA in the World Cup last night. It means the team missed out on a chance to guarantee a place in the last 16. Supporters at a fan zone in South London were furious by the result, throwing cups and spraying drinks. England will face Wales next, with the latter needing a victory to keep up their chances of making the knockout stages. And the Met Office has issued yellow weather warnings for rain and strong winds for large parts of the UK this weekend. Conditions will affect southern England, Wales and Scotland. The warnings in Wales and England come into force at 2 p.m. today, and they'll stay in place until 3 a.m. tomorrow morning. Forecasters say there's going to be travel disruption as a result. TV, online and DAB+ radio. This is GB News. Now it's back to Alastair Stewart and friends.
Tatiana, thanks very much indeed. Sean says we buy non-brand groceries. It's the biggest saving we've made, so passes that on. And thanks very much indeed, Sean. Keep those observations coming in. Now, 86,000 young people are currently experiencing homelessness in the UK, and that is according to the charity Centrepoint. 8,500 of them are in the West Midlands alone. In Birmingham, many of them turn toward local charities like St Basil's, and every year they host an event called the Big Sleep Out to raise tens of thousands of pounds for their youth homeless prevention work. Well, our reporter Jack Carson went along last night to find out how it worked and to talk to some of the people involved.
An annual event since 1990, the St Basil's Big Sleep Out challenges people to sleep rough for one night in an effort to raise money for the campaign to prevent youth homelessness in Birmingham. It's a night which easily raises thousands of pounds for the charity every year, and Head of Fundraising Barry Hodge says the event has never been more important.
This is our flagship fundraiser. It raises the most money out of all the events that we do throughout the year, and ultimately it allows us to be able to provide that much needed support for young people living in the West Midlands.
And for people here tonight doing it, what can they expect? I can see tinsel, I can see boxes.
Yeah.
What have we got?
It's one of those bizarre events that it's a coming together of people from all different walks of life. We've got schools that are here tonight, we've got faith groups that are here tonight, we've got big corporates that are here tonight, we've got people from local government that are here tonight that are taking part in this event. It's a bringing together because people are united in this stance of homelessness should not be part of growing up, homelessness should not be part of our society. So ultimately what they'll experience tonight is, for the first half it will be this very relaxed, friendly atmosphere, but the truth is when midnight kicks in and this event starts proper, the realities of the thing that we are trying to prevent will kick in. And I tell you something, for a lot of the people who do this event, it's not the actual doing the event where the realisation kicks in, it's the bit where they get home, they have a shower and they get into their own bed and realise that they're not going to have to do it again tonight, and that's the moment that will stick in their head forevermore.
The people here all get given cardboard and plastic sheeting to create their own accommodation for the night, and people get pretty creative with their designs too. But behind the box, there's a more serious reason why people take part.
We wanted to come to show how it is like living on the streets like a homeless person, and like how they have to like use cardboards and they can't actually have like a proper roof over their head because they don't have enough money.
So it just felt like a really good thing to do for us together, to do something that obviously affects people in our community, and see what it's like for them.
The charity Centrepoint estimates a 33% increase in the homeless population in England by 2024. As Birmingham is the youngest city in the country, many of the people that fall into it here will be aged below 24. It's why St Basil's focuses so much of its work on prevention.
It is really about refocusing where the priorities are. As a country, we tend to focus on crisis, and the old saying goes, if you always focus on crisis, all you're ever going to get is crisis. So the issues that we're trying to resolve are much further upstream. So we're working in schools, we're working in colleges. I mean, I'll give you a quick example. I was at a school today talking to the young people about homelessness, because we know if we catch people when things start to, maybe fall apart, we can prevent them from ending up in a situation where they're going to have to rely on a charity like us, or rely on, local councils, or, anything else, because ultimately that is what we're about, that is what we're trying to achieve.
Many people this Christmas will be on the brink of becoming homeless. If they do, charities like St Basil's, thanks to donations from people at events like this, will be there to support them. Jack Carson, GB News.
Food for thought there, and always good to see people doing delightful things to help other folk. I asked you at the top of the programme to get in touch, and you have, which is truly excellent. Quick one from my phone that's come in literally in the last few seconds. Murphy says, turn off the lights when you leave a room, close the doors, put down runners, little draft excluders, rugs on floorboards. It all helps keep temperatures up, and it all helps save electricity or however you heat your home. Murphy, thank you very much indeed. I read a bit out of Sean and his message earlier on, but he also makes the point that you should always try and use your local butcher and your farm shop. No alterations there, he says. Good to support local people and always good value for money. Glyn says at night, when you're under a duvet in one room, or one bedroom, for 8 hours, programme your boiler thermostat to reduce the temperature in the rest of the house and then only raise it when you get up. That's very sensible and, again, could, I'm sure, save a bit of money. Claire joins in and says, We had about 30 conifers cut down when we bought our house, so the wood burner is used all day and all evening, switching to solar too, so aiming for self-sufficiency. Barbecue and pizza oven also gets fired up with twigs, branches from the apple and walnut trees, same as when I was a child in the 1960s. As a double good, save money and remember those happy days of yore. So there we are, and have a good pizza at the same time as well. Thank you for that. Do keep those thoughts coming in, and as I say, we will share them as the programme progresses, not only because it's lovely to hear from you, but because it means you might just save a few bob next time you have to pay your oil, gas or electricity bill. That's the whole purpose of it. And you're watching and listening to Alastair Stewart and Friends, with plenty more still to come this afternoon, including with Black Friday, which we've already nodded to once already, with that yesterday and Cyber Monday coming up on its way. Christmas shoppers are rich pickings for the fraudsters. We'll be speaking to experts who can help you avoid the scams. But first, a quick break. We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Friday and Sunday night from 9, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
We're on the same page again. There's something good happening.
Let Ian finish. Don't be such a cranky. That mini budget was the tip of the iceberg.
And on Saturday, my show just got bigger. From 8, it's Mark Dolan's Saturday Night In.
You can't govern a country if you can't speak.
Stop talking.
My God, we reached the end. I've never been early in my life. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
And it's about standards and public life. No, I'll tell you what's hypocrisy, Narinda.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin.
We believe in the UK.
No bias, no censorship.
It just doesn't make sense to me. He wasn't doing his job as Chancellor.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton Tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News.
Welcome back. It's 1:45. You're watching Alastair Stewart and Friends here on GB News TV and radio. Many of us dream of getting away from it all when the weather turns cold and damp during the winter months. But buyers beware. Some holiday bargains are not what they seem. And that is the warning that comes from the very top, the Civil Aviation Authority, which says that many too-good-to-be-true holiday deals are actually scams. Angry travellers have noticed that their family holiday turns out to be either illegal or fake, with little or no protection. And I'm delighted now to be joined live by Paul Smith, who is the Director of Consumer and Markets Group at the Civil Aviation Authority. Good of you to join us live. I'd heard about Black Friday and Cyber Monday, but I'd never heard about this. I know about ABTA and IATA protection and stuff like that, but a big and growing industry in scamming folk for their money over a flight to X or a holiday to Y.
Yeah, so good afternoon, Alastair, and to your viewers as well. So we know from surveys we've done that this Black Friday, Cyber Monday period is one where an increasing number of people are looking out for or could be tempted by holiday bargains, and we really just want to make sure that that experience when they have their holiday is a really positive one. So there are just some simple things to really watch out for. If you're booking a package holiday, a flight and accommodation, check it's ATOL protected. We've got a website, atol.org. You can check that the company you're buying from is properly licensed by ourselves. If you can use your credit card, that gives you extra protection if anything does go wrong. Also, look out for those hidden extras. Are you sure what the full price is? What's the luggage allowance? Will you have to pay for some extra luggage? And of course, take out travel insurance. And that means hopefully your experience will be really positive. But if there is something that goes wrong, you're protected and there'll be somebody there to help you if there is a problem.
Are there any particular venues, locations that seem to be particularly vulnerable to this? You know, if I fancy going to the south of France or going to Turkey or Cyprus, wherever it might be, an extra warning because you and your colleagues at the CAA know that that's where the fraudsters are operating.
So, Alastair, I wouldn't say it was a particular destination. It's more around the increasing use of online to book holidays. We know up to 3/4 of people think and do book holidays online now, an increasing number of younger people as well doing that. And unfortunately, as you see in other aspects of life, online scammers are about. Holidays are often quite a high value purchase for people. So again, perhaps a particular target for scammers. So it's not a particular destination. It's really just the use of that online and looking out for, as I say, is it ATOL protected? Use your credit card if you can, just to make sure that hopefully it'll be a positive experience. It should be a positive experience, but if anything goes wrong, you've got the protection to help you in that situation.
And if it drops into your inbox or somebody tweets you with this very dubious offer, should the IATA logo be on that initial message? Or is it if you fall for it and then start the process of making an inquiry and then you start to get paperwork back from them? Should it be there from the outset?
So it absolutely should be on there. So for package holidays, it's ATOL. It's the ATOL brand that you look for. But what I would say to people is before you commence that booking process, just drop on our website, atol.org, put the name of the company into our website, and that will tell you, have they got the ATOL license from ourselves? Are they, and therefore is your holiday, if you make a booking, is that protected if something does go wrong? And sadly, of course, sometimes things do go wrong, but hopefully not very often, and we can be here to help you if you've booked using a company that's licensed by ourselves.
Yeah, and not only licensed, but also the bond, so that if things did go wrong, then you have a financial fallback position, which clearly you wouldn't have if they were not part of ATOL.
Absolutely. So if something does go wrong, for example, before you travel, then we would be there to provide a refund under the ATOL scheme. If you are overseas, when something goes wrong with your travel agent, then we would help you make sure that you get back from wherever you are. And we do that when there are, unfortunately, a small number of failures each year. We're there to help people in those situations.
Brilliant. Very, very good advice indeed. So if you think you smell a rat at all, then go onto their website, check it out, put the name of the person in there, and don't part company with a penny until you're confident. And if you do eventually part company with your money, do it on the credit card, because then you get extra support there. The final question is a slightly cheeky one, because we're also looking at the wave of industrial action in this country. Are you finding at the CAA that domestic airline travel is having a bit of a boom, a bit of a renaissance because of the strikes on the railway? I mean, certainly if you want to get to Edinburgh or Glasgow or Manchester from down south, there are domestic aviation routes that you can use if you can't use the train. Are you seeing a bit of a boom there?
So we're certainly seeing a big recovery, obviously, after the pandemic in air travel across the whole piece. I wouldn't say there's a particular increase in domestic travel as a result of the strikes, or at least not information we've got for that. But certainly some positive things now, increased connectivity around the country from aviation. So, whether that's to Northern Ireland or to other places. But we're just seeing, I think, a general, and this is really positive. People are keen to get back flying and keen to travel again, whether that's to meet family and friends or whether that's to have a holiday. So I think it's a really positive recovery from the from what happened in the pandemic.
Excellent. Paul, great to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed for fitting us into your busy weekend. That's Paul Smith, Director of Consumer and Market Groups at the Civil Aviation Authority, with brilliant advice and guidance. If you are tempted to have a quick break and it just doesn't look quite right, he's the place to go to, and they'll put you absolutely right about it, because there are scammers out there. Joining me now is Tony Sales, who certainly knows a lot about the dangers of fraud and scamming, having been a fraudster himself. Indeed, Tony was Britain's greatest fraudster, according to some in the media, but saw the light and is now also the co-founder of We Fight Fraud. Did it surprise you when you were on the bad side of the fence just how easy it was to con people like me and others?
No, because as people, we only ever hear what people say to us. So unless we're believing everyone's lying to us all the time, then we're kind of not, we're not going to disbelieve them. So it was really easy to always, and it still is easy to get information out of people, because as humans, we don't mind sharing that kind of stuff, Yeah.
An interesting tying that very honest observation together with what my previous guest was saying from the Civil Aviation Authority. 2 weeks in the south of France for just 50 quid sounds absolutely wonderful, and I'm desperate to have a break, and I've just about got 50 quid I can scrape together. You fall for it because you want to believe what you're seeing.
Yeah, but I guess that, look, so there's different types of scams, right? With the online thing, because now we're used to transferring money quicker, we're living in a much faster paced world, right? So we've got different websites where we can look and find a room over in one country, and we can find the flight and match that all up together. And the problem is that we're always looking for something a little bit cheaper. Now, when you're doing that, and the companies may ask you to transfer the funds, that is where the problem lies, because once you transfer funds to someone and you're taking it out of the payment network that's accepted, like, Visa, MasterCard, these types of companies that will trace back the payments, when you transfer that, it's very different, because you're instigating that payment to someone. So that then is on you and your responsibility. And that's where we see a lot of the holiday scams creeping in. There are still many different types of ones that, they circumvent. You can buy vouchers to get holidays. They're circumventing the ATOL type of thing. And this is where criminals get very smart to circumvent procedures that are put in place.
I found it fascinating when I was reading up on you and the notes that my lovely team gave me about you, is that some of your main customers, your big customers, are the world's leading brands, wanting to protect their identity and, I guess, in a way, their reputations in this sense. Is that because they fear they're being ripped off, or people are ripping me and others off in their name?
Alastair, we're living in unprecedented times, okay? Yeah, we are continuously under attack from either foreign state actors or hackers that are trying to steal data. The data ends up on the dark web. Fraudsters like my old self then get hold of this information, and then they call it now social engineering, and they will start to target people on the phone. So we can relate it to the phone spoofing stuff that we've seen recently, where people have bank numbers spoofed and believe that their bank is talking to them and how they have to secure their money. Then you have the HMRC scams, but there's the phishing scams, the ransomware attacks. There's an absolute tsunami of data out of there that the old, the old me's that are current today would take and abuse. And that's why we all have to get better as humans, defending against this consistent barrage of fraud that we see every day. It's increased massively.
We began our conversation, funnily enough, this afternoon about the fact that pensioners are about to get their winter fuel payments and people on universal credit. There's a lot of government money, as you said, HMRC, but also Department of Work and Pensions winging its way. And in my naivety at my age, I was genuinely shocked to see that those government payments to those in the greatest need were an absolute top target for the fraudsters.
Yeah, because they're the most vulnerable, right? And because they're the most vulnerable, fraudsters target that. You know, we think about it. We come out of a pandemic, everyone's in panic and fear. If you're a criminal who can utilize that panic and fear to create more panic and fear, you can steal people's money, and that's what the fraudsters do. And now it's just, there's more crises coming. We've just had the war on Ukraine that's impacted a bit on us, and we're all worried about them. And now we've got a cash for living crisis like never before. On the back of all that stuff, we've got fear and panic like we've never had before. And so we're more vulnerable than we ever are before. And, you know, the fact that the government wants to give us money, the criminals want to try and steal that money from whatever way they can, and they will try.
Tony Sales, really enjoyed that conversation. I learned a great deal from it, and I'm sure that those who are kind enough to be listening to or watching our conversation will have done as well. And if you want more, We Fight Fraud is the website, and Tony Sales there is the co-founder of it. Look after yourself, and the fraudster may be pretending to be Her Majesty's Revenue and Custom or the Department of Work and Pensions. So really, you do have to be careful out there. You're watching and listening to Alastair Stewart and Friends, with lots more still to come this afternoon, including more money-saving tips from the experts. Plus, we'll be joined by Kids TV and Panto star Mike McLean. Oh, yes, we will. But first, a quick break.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by two of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late-night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
It's 1 minute past 1, so welcome if you just joined us here on GB News TV and Radio. We're with you right up until 2 o'clock. And hello again, and thanks for being with us if you've been with us since 12 o'clock. I am Alastair Stewart, and we've plenty more still to come in our second hour. Stories of how Britons are adapting to survive in the face of the cost of living crisis, how they're saving money and taking on those rising energy bills. We'll also be crossing to Doha to get a sense of the mood there following a lacklustre day for the home nations at the World Cup yesterday. And we'll be looking ahead at that crucial tie between England and Wales next week. But first, let's bring you right up to date with all of the day's news. Here again is Tatiana Sanchez.
Thank you, Alastair. This is the latest from the GB newsroom. London Fire Brigade's chief says firefighters face being sacked if they're found to have bullied or been racist, misogynistic or homophobic. Andy Rose says there'll be a zero-tolerance approach after an independent review into the culture within the service. The report revealed accounts from a black firefighter who had a noose placed by his locker, women being groped and people having their helmets filled with urine. The review was commissioned after a trainee firefighter took his own life in 2020. London Fire Brigade bosses have said the behaviour isn't acceptable and they've welcomed the recommendations made by the review. At least 13 people are missing after a landslide in Italy. A number of people are feared to have been killed in the incident on the holiday island of Ischia, which has been hit by heavy rain in recent days. However, Italy's Interior Minister says the deaths haven't been confirmed. Emergency services say they're continuing the search and rescue operation as buildings have been engulfed by the landslide. Train cleaners have voted to strike over pay in what would be the biggest strike ever in the industry. The rail, maritime and transport unions say more than 1,000 of its members working for several private contractors backed the industrial action. It says rail strikes by train drivers continue today with more travel disruption expected. Members of ASLEF across 11 train operators are walking out in a dispute over pay, meaning a significantly reduced service. The death of a man at the Manston Migrant Processing Centre may have been caused by a bacterial infection. That's according to the Home Office. An investigation is currently ongoing and the coroner hasn't made a final conclusion on the cause of his death. It's believed the man arrived in the UK on a small boat just 1 week before he died. The government say they're offering vaccinations for the infection at the Manston Centre. The United Nations is calling for humanitarian aid for people in Ukraine who've been left without power following Russian attacks. It's after Ukraine's President Zelensky says 6 million people are without electricity after the series of rocket attacks earlier this week. The mayor of Ukraine, Vitaly Klitschko, says about 70% of households in Kyiv still have no power. Meanwhile, British military intelligence says Russia is removing nuclear warheads from old cruise missiles before using them for attacks in Ukraine. The MOD says the move highlights Moscow's low stock of long-range missiles. England manager Gareth Southgate played down boos by disappointed fans following the Lions' draw with the USA in the World Cup last night. It means the team missed out on a chance to guarantee a place in the last 16. Supporters at a fan zone in South London were furious by the result, throwing cups and spraying drinks. England will face Wales next, with the latter needing a victory to keep up their chances of making the knockout stages. Former England manager Sam Allardyce says he's still hopeful England can win the tournament.
There's enough experience in the backroom staff, the manager, there's enough experience in the squad now, having gone through 2 tournaments, that they've got the tools to win this competition. But Gareth needs to use the squad to its full potential, and that means, for me, quite a few changes for the next game.
Well, disappointed England and Wales fans in Qatar still believe both teams have a chance at moving on in the tournament.
You're always hopeful as an England fan that we'll progress in the tournament. They're a good football team. They've got some of the world's best players. Yes, they didn't perform last night, but you're always hopeful. You always live for that dream.
I mean, we are disappointed with the results, certainly in the Iran game. We were hoping to get a point out of that, at least to put us in a big position and keep destiny in our own hands for the next round of games. But we are still in the tournament going into the final round of games. We can still qualify, OK? We're delighted to still be in that conversation.
And a yellow weather warning for rain and strong winds is also affecting travel today, with the warnings in place for large parts of the UK. Conditions will affect southern England, Wales and Scotland. The warnings in Wales and England will come into force in around an hour's time, and they stay in place until 3 a.m. tomorrow morning. This is GB News. We'll bring you more news as it happens. Now let's get back to Alastair Stewart and friends.
Tatiana, thanks very much indeed. Now, before we go back to our top discussion about the cost of living, yesterday saw Black Friday sales bouncing back this year as shoppers seek bargains in the run-up to Christmas. And it'll happen all over again for Cyber Monday in just a few days. Like you, I'm sure my timeline and inbox has been awash with those tempting offers that look just too good to be true. And tragically, many of them actually are exactly that. So I'm particularly pleased to be joined by Levi Winchester, the money editor of the Daily Mirror and Mirror Money, who has been leading something of a one-person charge against this and joins me live now. Great to see you. We had to cancel last time we tried to book it, and I'm thrilled to bits that we were able to sort it out. Today is all about practical tips and guidance to folk listening to our conversation. So I just delete them from my timeline. I just ignore direct messages offering me things that just cannot be true because they aren't. What are the other tips you as an expert would offer to folk listening to and watching our conversation, Levi?
Good afternoon, Alastair. Thank you so much again for having me on. So absolutely, Black Friday and Cyber Monday, you're going to be bombarded with deals, as you said previously. You know, all the retailers, everywhere you look, there are discounts galore on everything from air fryers. I mean, air fryers are the biggest trend this year. And then you've got all the usual sales too on everything from clothes to vacuum cleaners and Christmas gifts. So I think looking into Cyber Monday, it's really, really important to be prepared. So start off by writing a list of things that you actually want to buy. This will help you to avoid any impulse spends. Then next, work out your budget. Go through your bank statements and work out what you can actually afford to buy after you've paid off all your bills, your food, your transport, etc. But then also make sure you're not going to be spending all of your disposable income. Next, make sure you compare prices using websites like Google Shopping and Price Spy or Camel for Amazon. And then if you think you have found a deal, check if you can get cash back through websites like topcashback.co.uk. This is basically where you get money back on qualifying spends on purchases that you've been making anyway. Then finally, always check your refund and return rights. So while Cyber Monday seems like a lot of fun, it's very easy to get sucked in, and it's so important to do your research first.
And worth remembering as well in that context, because the Civil Aviation Authority were just making exactly the same point. If it's, you know, let's pop across to Paris for dinner, a big celebration, or down to the south of France for a couple of weeks, use a credit card, make sure that your rights are there. The other thing that a friend of mine was pointing out about Amazon is that it's a marketplace as well for an awful lot of other people who may not be well-known, identifiable brand traders. It's just you and me thinking it's time to sell X, Y or Z, my collection of vinyl or whatever it might be. You can use that as well. And for that, you've got to be doubly careful.
Yes, absolutely. So whenever you're shopping online, it's always super important to be cautious. But Black Friday and Cyber Monday in particular is often a prime time for scammers. So last year, the number of purchase scams, which is where you are tricked into buying something online that doesn't actually exist, rose by 34% on Black Friday and Cyber Monday last year. So if you spot something online, read the reviews and check the website to check that everything is genuine. Also be aware of any unusual phone calls or emails you weren't expecting. And if you think you have been scammed, contact your bank immediately and report it to actual fraud. And you know, you're absolutely right, Alastair. If it seems too good to be true, then chances are it probably is.
Talk to you, and again, my apologies that we had to reshuffle it, but I'm glad we were able to do that successfully. And do keep in touch. Always welcome on the programme. Levi Winchester, they're the money editor of the Daily Mirror and Mirror Money, which itself is well worth following for good tips and good guidance. Talking of which, I've just had an absolutely brilliant message online, as promised, and that is from Mel, who says, save money by buying traditional gifts as well, things like gloves and scarves, because they also help keep you warm. I like that. Thank you for that. I do love it. Now, that's a little upbeat. We're not going to be totally down in the dumps today, but we're being realistic and honest, because it does appear that we're on the precipice of another winter of discontent, because the government is about to spend £25 million on advertising campaigning, sharing their best tips on how to cut back on energy, reduce your bill, and indeed reduce national demand. But as the People's Channel, we wanted to hear from you on what you're doing to try and keep ahead of the game and keep warm this winter. And many of you have already done that, for which we are grateful. Keep them coming in and we'll share them before we finish the show at 2 o'clock. What's more, as more rail strikes are confirmed, how are you getting from A to B? How are you communicating with people in the face of the postal strike and getting stuff to people as we run up to Christmas? There are answers to all of those, but with nurses poised to down tools, except in emergencies, is there a fallback position? Does one exist? Well, I'm delighted to be joined next by Will Hodgson, who's consumer champion of how to save it, also an entrepreneur who entered the Dragon's Den with Look After My Bills and was given one of the best deals that on the show so far. So warmest congratulations on that. So you have expertise in these areas. What are your top tips that you're prepared to share? Not for a deal with me, because as I said at the beginning of the programme, I have no money to offer. I can't take shares or offer you any kind of deal. But you're an experienced deal maker. What do you think every man and woman and child listening to this conversation should be doing right now to try and keep those bills in order?
Well, the first thing you do, Alastair, is you look at what you can do without having to sink any of your own money first. So you've got things like making sure that you're running your washing machine at the lowest temperature. 30 degrees is nearly always enough. Don't set off your dishwasher unless it's full. Then look at things like excluding drafts around the home. Now, those things might seem minor, but I promise you they can add up to several £100s of savings per year. But for the big savings, for the really big savings, you need to invest a little bit of money. I would recommend anyone to look for their energy performance certificate. Now, this is a government-approved certificate. It's available online, and it will set out what steps you would need to take to make your home more energy efficient. It sets out how much it would cost and also how much it would save. And one angle on the current energy crisis, prices being so high, is the savings have never been so high. So investments that might have taken 2 years to pay off might now pay off in less than 15 months. In particular, I'm thinking about stuff like insulating your loft. That costs about £500 to do and will save you about £450 a year if you've got an average size home.
Does it cost a lot to have that survey done and resulting in the certificate that you just, which I guess is like an MOT and tells you what you need to do before the next time?
Alistair, it's free. It's absolutely free. So if your home has been on the market, either to be rented or to be bought in the last couple of decades, there will be an EPC, Energy Performance Certificate. This can't be jargon anymore. Everyone should be familiar with it. It's an EPC that will be available online at a government website. The numbers are going to give you a rough idea of how much you could save, and you could be surprised if you've got a few £100s spare. And we don't all have that. If you have, there has never been a better time to invest in energy efficiency. Because as you said, Alastair, my background at Dragon's Den was about saving people money, but that was a different time. That was when to save money, you had to change your energy supplier, get a cheaper tariff. You can't do that anymore.
No.
The only way to reduce your energy bill is to reduce your energy usage. We can do a lot on our own. I've just discussed it here with you. But what we really need is government help. Nothing short of a national insulation scheme is what's required.
Can I finish with this observation? And I was talking to my first two guests about it. One was a debt advisor and the other a young political commentator. And I put it to both of them and they agreed that what we really need, apart from the certificates you've described and insulation and all the rest of it, is we need growth in the economy, we need better pay, we need more businesses, which you're an expert in as well, setting up to get the economy. Otherwise, we are heading for dependency and decline. How worried are you about that?
Well, it sounds as though everyone's agreeing with you, Alastair. So, without being too boring, I do agree with you as well. This focus on growth actually came with a bit of a bad rap because we all know that things didn't go particularly well for Liz Truss when that was her mantra. However, if we're talking about sparing up capacity for the economy to grow, I think that has to be a priority. It's not a separate subject from the cost of living crisis. In my mind, growth is what happens with the money that's left after your bills are paid. And with bills going through the roof, it's the first priority of any growth-focused government to do whatever it can to get those bills under control. After that, we're looking at a new future for Britain. We're looking at new ways to generate growth. And I think we've got any number of advantages as a nation, not just in the energy sector, where we are world leaders in things like offshore wind, but also in things like financial technology, medical technology. These things are going to be vital in the future. And I think the government has got a big role to play in supporting Britain making the most of its potential.
Will Hodgson, music to my ears. I agree with every single word of that. Thanks also for your tips on the certification and invest a little bit to save potentially quite a lot. Great to see you and keep in touch. Love to talk to you again. Will Hodgson there, consumer champion at How to Save It. Another great site to look up, read it and follow the advice and guidance. Well, joining me now is Angus Forbes. Change of tack slightly, although he is also a small businessman. But first and foremost, Angus is Conservative councillor for the Castle of Gowrie ward. And he has been a Conservative councillor for the last 5 years. And over that period has fought hard for his neck of the woods. Politically and economically, as a councillor and a small businessman, have you ever known more challenging times than these?
No, absolutely not. I haven't even imagined more challenging times than these. So I'm relatively lucky in that the Castle of Gowrie is a relatively affluent area. So I'm not seeing the issues that some of my colleagues are seeing at the council. But without a shadow of a doubt, that my mailbox, to use the modern parlance, is more full with questions about the cost of living than absolutely anything else.
And interestingly, more than, say, I'm worried about the rail strike because I can't get from A to B, or I'm worried about the fact that the Prime Minister, member of your party, has said we simply can't afford the pay rise that the nurses are seeking. It's straightforward cost of living stuff. It's making ends meet myself.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I used to joke that my mailbag was full of complaints about dog poo. I haven't had a complaint about dog poo for months now. I will get at least 2 emails a day about the cost of living crisis. People going from one extreme to be genuinely terrified to simply asking for advice or where they can find some tips and guidance like we've just heard from other people on your show today.
But I mentioned the fact that you are a businessman as well as being a politician, because one of the things that worries me most in this context is that the real answer to all of this is not direct government intervention in terms of bailouts, although there's another argument to be had about public sector pay. It is about growth in the economy, as you just heard from my last guest there, who's a former contestant on the Dragon's Den. Unless we're building new businesses, unless we're employing people and paying them decent money, this economy is going to grind to a halt and it's going to become a dependency culture. As a politician and a businessman, doesn't that worry you?
It does. It absolutely does worry me. So I'm not sure if you mentioned or not, my business is relatively small. I'm a self-employed photographer. So from a business perspective, the cost of living crisis is not affecting me in that regard, but it is affecting me because my customers are having to change their spending patterns. So big businesses that would have engaged me as a photographer to do some work for them are now affected by, by the cost of electricity and other fuel. So therefore, they're looking at other ways to save money, and that's affecting my business at the moment as well. But yeah, what you said is absolutely right.
Interestingly, I heard you there say that it hadn't directly impacted upon you. Do you mean your own budget or your business?
My business is relatively small, so I'm self-employed. So the amount of energy that my business uses is so small that it's not really making a difference to me in terms of energy costs, but it is making a difference to my customers, who are therefore changing their spending patterns. And instead of engaging me to do some photography work for them, they're choosing to do it themselves.
And what is your view when you reflect upon those problems that people bring to you via your mailbox, I mean, either the post, if they can still get a letter to you, or more directly electronically, who say, oh, the government have got to do even more. Because if you tot up what this government has spent on helping with energy prices and paying for the huge costs of the whole pandemic period, for taxpayers, there is a limit to just how deep their pockets should be.
Interesting you say that, because actually the tone of the vast majority of the letters I'm getting are not about the government must do more for me, they must give me more money, because I actually think the vast majority of people agree with what you've just said, and that the amount of money the government have spent on the country over the last 3 years is astronomical and will take decades and decades and generations probably to pay back. So people aren't asking me about that. They're asking me about, where can I get some money to help? Is there money available that can help me? Is there advice that the council or anyone else can give me about reducing the cost of living? And as a council, we're issuing advice to people, and I'm seeing really interesting things where people are helping each other. So charities and churches are creating warm spaces that people can go and have a basic lunch and a cup of tea, and they play table tennis and they have a chat. I met with 5 elderly ladies on Thursday who told me that what they're doing is they're all getting together. So instead of each of them sitting in their own house during the day, they're going around each other's houses. So they heat one house on a Monday and another house on a Tuesday. And these are the kind of things that people are doing just to try and get through the winter.
And there's an upside to that, Angus, isn't there? Just nice that people can help each other, which is excellent. Yeah. Great of you to find time for us this Saturday afternoon, Angus, and a pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much indeed. That's Angus Forbes, who is a Conservative councillor in Gowrie Ward, Cars of Gowrie Ward, and, as he said, a self-employed small businessman with absolute honesty and transparency there as a Conservative councillor about the state that we're in and what his voters and electorate and people he represents have been telling him about the state that we are in. Talking of which, I am delighted to be joined by my next guest, nurse and writer Sarah Jane Palmer. Not a great programme for you so far, because there is a sense of sympathy with the nurses, but also a sense that there is a limit to what the government can do to help. And the Prime Minister himself yesterday said, simply cannot meet your demand. No. Deep down, you don't want to go on strike either, do you?
No, I'm actually against the strike. So I think at $9 billion it would cost to meet this pay rise demand of 17.6%. I think that's unreasonable, and I do think a strike would be very unsafe for patients. The British Medical Journal has already shown that when there are less nurses on shift, the mortality rate rises. A study in the US showed that there was a 19% rise in mortality when the nurses went on strike over there. So I think that shows that I cannot see how they can meet the NMC Code of Conduct, which is to preserve the safety of all patients and uphold the reputation of the profession. So even though I am a nurse and I do sympathise, I don't think it's the answer, and I don't think it's morally right.
Although you're also a writer and a commentator on these matters, as well as a nurse.
Yeah.
And we're looking at pictures now. If you're listening to us on the radio, we're looking at pictures there of Rishi Sunak in a hospital, surrounded by nurses and other workers there. Mixed signals from government, because when the Royal College initially said we've balloted and these are the results, they also said, but we've met with the Health Secretary and the buzz was quite positive. That's now all gone very, very quiet. Does that worry you?
It does. It concerns me that they said Steve Barclay walked away from negotiating with them on the pay demand, but then I'm not sure what the government can do when they've already said that this is unreasonable. I think the amount that they're asking for is just so unreasonable that I can't see how negotiation is possible for the government and the RCN.
I wish you were at those talks, because actually you do answer your own question in a piece that I read that you wrote, and that is that you are convinced, as a frontline nurse, that there is fat that can be cut from the NHS, and a lot of it is to be found, as a lot of GB News and radio viewers and listeners have told me in a whole series of emails and tweets, and that is in middle management. They don't want it cut from you, because if I'm in trouble or my kids are in trouble, it's you and the doctor and the consultant who help me out.
Absolutely.
The middle manager, But you've looked at that from the front line and you say, yes, that can be done.
Oh, absolutely. There's a huge waste of money and mismanagement of funds in the NHS. And I mean, in NHS England, they had a load of laptops that they threw away after a couple of years of having them. They bought them all in bulk in the pandemic, and then they had to dispose of them within 2 years, saying they were old. I mean, that's a waste of money. But then, as you say, there's middle management as well. I mean, there's such a waste on middle management, and there's such mismanagement of the whole system. I think they need an overhaul of the whole structure of how the NHS is managed. I think there's a lot of unnecessary managers in place when that money could be saved, and then maybe it would be more reasonable to then ask for a pay rise for the nurses. But we can't just keep giving more and more money to the NHS.
No. Well, you're so honest about it, because I do genuinely find that quite extraordinary. Because the debate within the rail industry is exactly that both the government, new Transport Secretary, and the train operating companies and Network Rail themselves are saying to the unions, like it or not, if you agree to these changes in work practices and so on, then there will be money.
Yeah.
In effect, you're sitting there as a nurse saying, yeah, let's look at what those changes in work practices and how the NHS works might be made. And then, lo and behold, you know what? You might actually find the money that we want.
That's right, exactly. And whereas at the moment, to ask the taxpayers to spend $9 billion on a pay rise for nurses when they haven't done anything to actually save money in the NHS, with all of these areas that could easily be improved upon, I think that's what I find so unreasonable about the whole situation. And then a strike, if it wasn't a cost of living crisis and we weren't in a deep recession, then maybe it would be more reasonable if they made a reasonable demand and it wasn't being met and there was the money there. But at the moment, the situation just doesn't allow for that. It's not possible to get that pay rise.
Sure.
So,
and the public love you guys and gals. Does the Royal College realise how much that love may decline as a result of industrial action?
Well, that's the thing. I do feel there's a degree of brainwashing because the RCN quite willfully encourage this sort of attitude among all of the nurses as a sort of team effort to believe that they're quite hard done by. And they do work really hard. They deserve fair pay. But I think they've been misled to a degree by the RCN, and they've all ended up with an unreasonable view. But I think that's because they haven't been encouraged to critique the argument for a pay rise and the timing of it. Yeah.
Will you keep in touch with us? Because as this progresses, hopefully not to all-out industrial action, keep in touch with us because I'd love to talk to you again.
Oh, absolutely.
You've been so honest about it and you've got brilliant, positive ideas as well. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Sarah Jane Palmer there, who, as I've said, is a frontline nurse, but also a really thoughtful writer on all of these matters. It is, what is it? It's 12 minutes. No, it's not. It's 1:28. So that's coming up to 1:30. I apologise. And in that final half hour, we've lots more still to come here on Alastair Stewart and Friends. An independent review has found that the London Fire Brigade's institutionally racist and misogynist. We'll be live at the LFB's headquarters for reaction to that. But first, a quick look at the weather.
Looking ahead to this afternoon, and the UK is looking to be rather mild thanks to the winds upcoming from the south. Let's take a look at the details. These southerly winds will be brisk, with strong gusts developing across northeast Scotland if outbreaks of rain arrive during the afternoon. Though Shetland will stay drier until the evening. Winds will be particularly strong in the west, with the risk of coastal gales, however. It will turn drier for Northern Ireland as the rain clears. Areas of northern England will see some heavier bursts of rain develop into the afternoon, turning it into a wet and soggy Saturday. Despite the mild conditions for late November, the feel of things will be tempered by all the rain and wind, and northwestern Wales will be exposed to some of the strongest gales. Inland areas of England will be slightly more sheltered during the day, but the breeze will begin to pick up as the cloud thickens and the outbreaks of rain gradually progress eastwards. It's southeast England that will remain driest for the longest, and there'll be some hazy sunshine during the afternoon, but temperatures may be a touch lower than those in the west. And due to the wet week many western areas have had, the additional rainfall this afternoon could lead to some disruption and surface flooding, so care should be taken when travelling. And that is how the weather is.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by two of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Good afternoon, it's 1:32. I'm Tatiana Sanchez in the GB newsroom. London Fire Brigade's chief says firefighters face being sacked if they're found to have bullied or been racist, misogynistic or homophobic. Andy Rose says there'll be a zero-tolerance approach after an independent review into the culture within the service. The report revealed accounts from a black firefighter who had a noose placed by his locker, women being groped and people having their helmets filled with urine. The review was commissioned after a trainee firefighter took his own life in 2020. London Fire Brigade bosses have said the behaviour is not acceptable and they welcomed the recommendations made by the review. Rail strikes by train drivers continue today, with more travel disruption expected for passengers. Members of ASLEF across 11 train operators are walking out in a dispute over pay, meaning a significantly reduced service. The General Secretary of ASLEF is due to meet the Transport Secretary, Mark Harper, next week to discuss the dispute. England manager Gareth Southgate played down boos by disappointed fans following the Lions' draw with the USA in the World Cup last night. It means the team missed out on a chance to guarantee a place in the last 16. Supporters at a fan zone in South London were furious by the result, throwing cups and spraying drinks. England will face Wales next, with the latter needing a victory to keep up their chances of making the knockout rounds. At least 13 people are missing after a landslide in Italy. A number of people are feared to have been killed in the incident on the holiday island Ischia, which has been hit by heavy rain in recent days. However, Italy's Interior Minister says the deaths haven't been confirmed. Emergency services say they're continuing the search and rescue operation as buildings have been engulfed by the landslide. And a yellow weather warning for rain and strong winds will also be affecting travel today, with the warnings in place for large parts of the UK. Conditions will affect southern England, Wales and Scotland. The warnings in Wales and England will come into force in around half an hour's time, and they'll stay in place until 3 a.m. tomorrow morning. TV, online and DAB+ radio. This is GB News. Now it's back to Alastair Stewart and friends.
Tatiana, thank you very much indeed. And as promised, we pick up on one of the stories in Tatiana's news bulletin there. An independent review has indeed found that the London Fire Brigade is, and I quote, institutionally misogynist and racist. The independent culture review examined the LFB's culture after trainee firefighter Jaden Matthew Francois Esprit took his own life in August 2020. More than 2,000 current and former staff and community groups spoke out, reporting sexist, racist and homophobic behaviour. Leadership issues were also mentioned. Staff are afraid to speak out about abuse. Unacceptable behaviour toward members of the public was also recorded. The London Fire Commissioner has said that the behaviour highlighted is unacceptable and welcomed the recommendations made by the review. Well, GB News national reporter Theo Chikomba is outside the London Fire Brigade headquarters for us now. I mean, this is quite staggering as a report, plus the acceptance of it by the bosses where you are.
Yes, it's a damning report into the culture here at the London Fire Brigade. It's a report that took around 10 months. Nazir Afzal, who's a former Chief Crown Prosecutor for the North West, with his team, 8 of them, spoke to a number of officers across the country. As you mentioned earlier, around 2,000 Fire Brigade workers were questioned over that period, and it was through written statements, interviews and so on. Now, just to give you an example of some of the stuff that is in this report, a white female firefighter received a video of a colleague exposing himself. There were examples of men huddled around a screen watching porn in their offices, and just this one, which is very touching. It says, when we go to work, you could end up being sent to extremely dangerous incidents. One female firefighter was saying, in these cases, your life depends on your colleagues, and you have to rely on them to get out safely. And how can you do that when they think so little of you and treat you like dirt all the time? Without respect, it makes the job impossible. Now, this report has been heard by the mayor and, of course, the brigade's commissioner. He's saying he was horrified to read the damning report into the brigade, adding, I think there are many staff decent who are public servants, and that will be equally, and he's equally horrified and, yeah, heartbroken, really. And he says from today, it will be completely clear to all staff that behaviour that isn't acceptable, there'll be zero tolerance, and that they will potentially lose their jobs. Alastair.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed. That's GB News national reporter Theo Chikomba at the headquarters of the London Fire Brigade, and we want to bring you the full statement. It'll only take a few moments, but it's very important to have balance and all the facts when we're covering something as sensitive as this. So we have the full statement from the London Fire Commissioner, Andy Rowe, who Theo mentioned there in his report. And what he has said is this. Today's a very sobering day. There is no place for discrimination, harassment or bullying in the brigade. And from today, it will be completely clear to all staff what behaviour isn't acceptable and what the consequences will be. So there you have it, on the record from the boss. We shall watch that with great interest. You're watching and listening to Alastair Stewart and Friends, with plenty more still to come in the final 20 minutes or so of the programme, including we've spoken a lot today about how we can help consumers through the cost of living crisis and the winter of discontent. But what about small businesses? They, of course, are the backbone of this country. We'll be discussing how they can play their part, and indeed how they are continuing to play their part, with a small businessman live here in the studio. But first, we're going to have a quick break.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
I think I've seen probably quite enough of Matt Hancock to last me a lifetime.
I'll also be getting to know you better, travelling to find out what you think about the politicians who are fighting for your vote.
They've got to get this country back on track.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. only on GB News, on TV, radio and online.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today. I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Welcome back. It is 13:42, sort of 8 minutes to 2. Welcome back, and you're listening to and watching Alastair Stewart and friends here on GB News TV and radio, and thank you very much indeed for so doing. As I have made crystal clear on this programme many, many times, in my view, and it is actually an economic fact, small businesses are the backbone of this country, and they too, like everybody else, are suffering from the cost of living crisis, rises in energy prices, rise of raw material, wages, and all of the rest of it. And they are trying to keep going what little growth there is to keep that going as well. Some restaurants and pubs are literally stripping back on their menus and offering basic dishes instead, just to save on their outgoings and keep going. Well, I'm delighted to be joined live in the studio now by Wilfred Maris, who is the owner of the Grill Shack and Tiki Bar. I know about you've literally had to cut back on portion sizes, and you're not alone, because when the Granada group was taken over, that was one of the key things that they had to do, even at that level of scale. But have you actually felt that you might not make it?
Yes. To be honest, Alastair, it's not just me. I think it's the entire industry. I mean, we're talking about a third of the hospitality industry that might shut down after probably January time comes. So everyone's hoping to have a good Christmas, hopefully. I think you mentioned also about reducing the portions, but we're also reducing the price as well, in some cases. But not every item on our menu, for example, we're going to reduce the portions. Where we can, we will do it. But we need to be realistic.
And you're very active in trying to draw people in with special offers and promotions. Are you still able to do that? Because any promotion that saves me, the consumer, a bob or two, costs you money.
Indeed, it did. It does cost us money. But where we can, we will do some promotions, especially on drinks, where we can play around with the margin that we are making on drinks. For example, we can do promotions, happy hours to attract more people, changing our marketing strategy. If it's social media, how the way we do it, trying to find some ideas to innovate, trying to stay alive in this business. Otherwise, it's going to be almost impossible with the rising cost of gas, of bills, electricity, you name it. It's a very challenging time we are facing now.
What would you say was the standout thing that you have been able to do, or forced to do? You choose the language that you want to use, both to keep the businesses going, but also to keep your own head above the water. What have you had to do that you never dreamt you'd have to do 6 months ago?
Probably it's the way we do business in general, in terms of trying to do cost-saving activities. Not just me, everyone involved in the restaurant as well, in the business. We cutting the gas maybe early, as soon as possible, cutting the ventilation, the air system as soon as possible as well in the evenings, switch off everything. The lights that we used to left on in the evening, maybe even it's the outdoor light to see the sign of the restaurant, maybe we turn it off in the evening before we leave. Shopping, the way we do shopping as well. Instead of going to the store, maybe we're looking online to see how we can find the cheapest, the bargains. I mean, it's Black Friday now. Everyone probably is online trying to find some deals online that are going to help us over the next few days or weeks.
Fascinating, absolutely fascinating. you don't only run your own brilliant tiki bar and restaurant, you set up the Haitian collective of businessmen and women who are running all sorts of small businesses. Who are the optimists, and why are they optimistic?
I guess, thank you. Yes, it's the only Haitian restaurant in the UK, to be honest, the only Haitian cocktail bar in the UK. So as such, people traveling from far to come and try our food, to have a taste of Haiti, because the news about Haiti is not always great. If I can say so.
That's a great business ploy.
Exactly. So I'm trying to do my best to keep my customers. Luckily to me, I think some of my customers, they can afford, regardless of inflation, they can still afford to come and enjoy having a nice, good food and a nice cocktail, or maybe some worms as well, which is a specialty of the Caribbean. So it's great to see. I think for some of our competitors as well, it depends on your location as well, where you can afford maybe to charge someone maybe £30 for a curry goat with rice and peas, but I cannot do that where I am in Acton, in W3. So it's to find a leverage where you can, between the costs, the customers, your location, trying to balance it all to see what you can offer to the customers that's realistic to you and your customers as well, so you can maintain that balance and trying to keep above the rest, really, to survive.
As you look forward, the budget, autumn statement, call it what you like, there were headline stories in there about giving pensioners a little bit more money, which is great, and giving the poorest folk a little bit more money. But the other great headline was that people who do work hard and earn decent money will be dragged into a higher rate of tax. The next story that's going to hit you is people who have less money in their pockets because they are now paying more tax. How worried are you?
Very, very worried. I was hoping the government was going to do something about tax. Also, some of the Rishi Sunak, when he was the head of the Chancellor, back then it did come out of, I think, during COVID to help businesses, small businesses, especially like us. They help out, to help out. It did really help us a lot. So that's the sort of initiative I was hoping to get from the government. The mini budget probably just kill it, and now we're hoping maybe the government will come with some sort of something to help us out.
Sure. We genuinely keep our fingers crossed for you, for the people you employ, and also for your friends who are also trying to do the same thing, because it really does matter.
It is, thank you.
Wilfred Maris, owner of Grill Shack and Tiki Bar, as you may have just noticed on that brilliant T-shirt. Great to see you, and I genuinely wish you the best of luck.
Thank you, Alastair.
Thank you for coming in and chatting to us about it. That's the challenges from the front line, facing exactly the same problems as you in making ends meet and keeping the business going. Now, England fans, as well as the nation's wags, we gather from the newspapers, bless her heart, were caught yawning after last night's World Cup board draw, as the papers have called it, against the United States of America. There's little doubt that it was a bad day for British football, although there's a lot of people told me last night online, saying I didn't understand it, that in fact the draw was just as good because it would pretty well guarantee that England got through. But that didn't stop it being any less of a bore. Wales lost 2-0 to Iran. England and Wales are now set to play against each other on Tuesday in what one of the papers there, the Daily Mail, is dubbing the Battle of Britain. So there we go. Our reporter, as you heard a little earlier here on GB News TV and radio, is live for us covering all of these events, and I'm delighted that he is, I think, about to join us. I'm just waiting for confirmation. Get us into it. So we can cross live to Doha, and Paul Hawkins is there waiting for us. Heard you a little bit earlier on. Fans, phlegmatic, philosophical, or even risking optimism. What do you reckon?
Oh, depends who you talk to, Alastair. I think most Wales fans are saying, hey, we were rubbish against Iran. Iran deserved to win. Look, we're just glad to be here because it's our first World Cup since 1958. A few Welsh fans, though, we spoke to earlier, said, no, we're still up for it. We're still in it. We're still in the conversation. We can beat England on Tuesday, which they have to do, and hope results go their way if they're going to qualify for the second round. England should qualify for the next phase. Even if they get beaten 3-0 by Wales, they can still qualify for the next round. But the big game here, well, at the moment, just to bring up what's happening right now, Poland are currently leading Saudi Arabia. It's almost half-time in that game. Saudi Arabia missed. They've just missed a penalty in that match. Remember, Saudi Arabia beat Argentina, and that is why Argentina against Mexico. Huge game here this evening. You're talking about the Battle of Britain, Alastair. This is the Battle of Latin America, and of course, little Mexico will hope to knock Argentina out of the World Cup because Argentina have to win that match if they want to stay in the competition later. And Argentina, as we know, former champions, they're one of the favourites to win this competition, so they'll be hoping to invoke the spirit of the late, great Maradona. In the meantime, Mexican fans will be hoping to cause a huge upset by knocking them out of the World Cup. This is what the Mexicans have been telling us.
Very exciting to be here in our, this is my first World Cup, and I say, David, I think it's the last of Messi, and it's kind of confusion because we are a huge fan of Messi, but also for Mexico, so it's very exciting.
Well, what would it mean for Mexico to knock Argentina out of the World Cup?
I think it's very hard. We have the hope.
Because you love Messi, but...
Yeah, but we're from Mexico, so we support both. El Chucky Lozano, El Chucky Lozano.
Yeah. That song is one of the songs the Mexican fans sing. You watch tonight because both the Mexicans and the Argentines love dressing up. We've seen a Mexican Batman wandering the streets of Doha. They'll be dressed in various costumes, waving flags, huge drums, those massive flags that you see in Latin American football. There'll be loads of noise tonight. It's going to be really good. That one kicks off at 7 o'clock UK time, 10 o'clock Doha time. In the meantime, England will be hoping to progress to the next phase, as we've already mentioned. We had a chat with these England fans earlier today.
USA are a good side. They're a young side, and 4 years' time they're going to be a force, especially if it's in the next World Cups in the States. There'll be a team to look out for.
He started with the team that had played so well before, so I can't criticise him for his team choice. But as players who didn't turn up, didn't perform like we thought they were going to perform.
Who should he have brought on?
I think Foden was the one we were calling out for. I'm a Chelsea supporter, and two guys that I would have replaced, I would have put Grealish and Foden on for Mount and Sterling. I didn't think they performed at all last night.
Yeah. So England taking on Wales on Tuesday, and as I say, we've still got to come today. France against Denmark, so one of the world's best players, Kylian Mbappe, and then Lionel Messi's Argentina have to beat Mexico later.
Paul, thank you very much indeed. Paul Hawkins there, GB News reporter, live in Qatar with more stories running at the same time than you can score goals against Iran. But there we are. Probably shouldn't have mentioned that, but I did. Never mind. Paul, keep in touch, mate. We'll talk to you later on. Thank you very, very much indeed. Now, you don't normally have World Cups at Christmas time, but one thing that you do normally have, I am delighted to say, is a pantomime with family and friends. It is part of the traditional way of celebrating, but I was intrigued to know how the cost of living crisis is affecting the great British tradition, because let's be honest, it may not be on that list of things with which you cannot do, be it turkey or be it potatoes or whatever. How fares that great tradition of British pantomime? Some theatres like Bridlington Spa, we were delighted to find out, have introduced payment plans to spread the cost of tickets. But will the theatre generally fall foul of family efforts to cut costs this year? I'm delighted to be joined live in the studio, still just about smiling, by a man who knows his fair share of pantos and entertaining folk. It is the great Mike McLean.
Thank you, Alastair.
Is it in difficulty this year? It is tough times. I'm not making light of that.
No, totally.
But it's tough time for you and the people who run the theatres that you work in.
Yeah, very tough. And I think a lot of theatres now are doing a special family of 4 and family of 5 tickets, which, I know I'm at the Ipswich Regent Theatre. Come and see it, by the way. It's a great show. I'll leave you a couple of tickets. So I think they're doing things to help families, so they're doing special prices and things like that, which is nice to see, because, as you know, this is a...
So not just Bridlington, that's...
No, I think other theatres are doing it as well. I don't know if they're doing a payment plan, but they are helping, they're doing special deals.
We've never, ever come across that. I mean, certainly one or two of the people on the team said, well, London's very good at West End if you got a few extra tickets, even for some of the big popular shows, then there are little kiosks of various
There are, I
places.
think, in Leicester Square, you know, but obviously we haven't got that in Ipswich. So, by the way, don't go to Leicester Square to get tickets for Ipswich because there won't be any. I just want to point that out now. The other thing I want to do is point out.
How are the theatres themselves feeling? I mentioned Bridlington there, but you know, if you go on the London Underground or you travel by train, there are posters everywhere. Very often featuring people like yourself, stars from television and stand-up and the rest of it, taking part in panto. Are most of the theatres this season trying to make a go of it?
Of course they are, especially coming back after the pandemic. You know, I mean, last year was the first time after the pandemic, and you were running at probably about 60-70% capacity, and we were hoping that this year will be a little bit more. You know, oh, that's my son. He's in pantomime. So this year, I'm hoping that it will, and I think some of them, like I said to you before, they're doing special deals, which is great to see, because it is a hard time out there. Really, really hard time.
Yeah. And interesting, my last guy, I don't know if you heard it because you were just coming in, but the restaurateur and the bar manager beforehand saying that as it were, spending patterns are changing. And in the midst of the pandemic, we had the now Prime Minister, when he was Chancellor, saying eat out to save the economy and the rest of it. Theatre generally is not getting a lot of love and not getting a lot of money from this government.
It didn't get any love at all. Every theatre I know, every actor, every actress, and we didn't get any help at all. We were the one sort of area that was like, OK, well, don't worry about them because we weren't important. And as you've just said, at Christmas time, we are important. You know, we for that hour, 2.5 hours, people come into a theatre, they get lost in the story, and our job is to make them cry. Forget every worries, forget about the electricity, forget about the gas. For 2.5 hours, my job as a comic is to make sure that they laugh and just have a great time.
Yeah, to me as well, one of the most important aspects of it, and you will know it so well looking into the eyeballs sitting there watching, is it's mum, dad and kids.
Of course it is. And it's the first time, Alastair, that a child will enter a theatre. It's the first time they'll ever enter a theatre. And how nice is that?
Let's hope they get hooked. I wish you the best of luck and all of your friends and colleagues.
Thank you.
It's tough times for all of us, but if it works for you, that's great, because it works for everybody else.
My prices are still going on, though.
Delighted to have Mike on the programme. And this year's adaptation of Peter Pan is at the Ipswich Reading Theatre, and you can see him there. That's all we have time for today. Back midday tomorrow. And until then, I hope you have a lovely Saturday and a splendid evening. But don't be anywhere other than 12 tomorrow. Bye for now. We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you know, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Friday and Sunday night from 9, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
We're on the same page again. There's something good happening.